I was shocked when I just heard from FBI 8 months ago. They came to my house and they said, the government in Iran trying to kidnap you. You have to be careful. You should not travel. I said, look, I have been receiving death threats every day. What's new? They said, no, this time is different.
Scary stuff. Good morning. Welcome back into the show. That was Masih Alinejad, the victim of an attempted kidnapping by Iranian officials. According to indictments filed by the Department of Justice, quote, Iranian intelligence services allegedly plotted to kidnap a U.S. journalist and human rights activist from New York City and return her to Iran. For more on this, I want to welcome in the former National Security Council Chief of Staff and President and CEO for the Center for Security Policy, Fred Fleitz, and Amir Fakhravar, the chairman of the National Iranian Congress, an opposition group to Iran's current regime. Gentlemen, good morning. Nice to have you both on. Fred, we'll start with you. Jamal Khashoggi, we remember that story. We don't think this type of thing happens on U.S. soil here. What does this mean? And is this an indication of maybe how bold the regime is willing to be on our soil?
Well, actually, Rob, it's happened on U.S. soil on a number of occasions. You may remember in 2011, the Iranians tried to assassinate the Saudi ambassador to the United States at Cafe Milano in D.C. My good friend Michael Ledeen, who's a strong critic of the Iranian regime, he wrote a book called The Iranian Time Bomb that came out in 2007. He had police outside of his house because of threats by the Iranian government to kill him. This has been going on for a long time. This is a terrorist regime. The question here is, why will the Biden administration not stop its efforts to negotiate with this terrorist regime? Yeah, and no response from the administration. Amir, nice to have you on. Good morning. You've got a very fascinating story. You've been thrown in jail by the Iranians 19 times. Your life continues to be threatened. I know that you know Masih personally and other reporters who've been threatened, even killed by the regime. How should the U.S. respond to something like this?
Thank you for having me. And let me say hi to Fred, too. Fred is 100% right. It's not the first time regime is doing that. But I am totally shocked to why still U.S. administration, the Biden administration, talking with this regime, which is not doing this type of plot outside of the country. And they are thinking about to doing it inside United States. But we are talking about the regime, which the supreme leader gave order himself. I mentioned that several times. I should mention it every single time, that this guy, supreme leader, he gave order last year to kill. It was a public order on national TV to kill 1,500 protesters, the kids in the streets in front of their parents with snipers, which the IRGC have done the job. And right now, Biden is talking to this guy. I know Masih Alinejad in person since 20 years ago when I was a student activist in Iran. And Masih was a journalist over there at that time. And this fight is continuing for last 4 decades.
Amir, can I interrupt you for a moment? A quick follow-up, and then I do want to ask Fred a question. But Amir, how is Masih right now? Is she, I mean, I know her doors are probably locked, but I'm always curious, as a journalist myself, what happens after the threat? How is she right now?
She's okay because the FBI is doing a great job. They had their eyes on her for last 7-8 months, and even they had her 3 times in the safe houses. But still, regime could find her in those safe houses too. That was 7 months, 6-7 months ago, when FBI. I'm not allowed to share more information about that, but on my part, it's mostly confidential. But they told me too that its regime is doing some plan here in Texas for me too in Houston, and still that case is ongoing cases, and regime is targeting those of us who are allowed to talk against the regime, talk about the human rights abuse by this regime, which is happening every single day.
Was there any concern, Amir, before you agreed to come on with us here on NewsMax? Was there any concern? Because they will likely see this interview.
Oh, it's the as I said several times, and it's Masih's story of life, my story of life. for last at least 15 years, which I'm living here.
Amir, we appreciate you being on with us. Fred, Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, did weigh in on this situation yesterday. Briefly, take a listen.
We categorically condemn Iran's dangerous and despicable reported plot to kidnap a U.S. citizen on U.S. soil. We will forcefully defend U.S. citizens and U.S. interests. That includes law enforcement actions like the one announced yesterday, as well as the actions the president has taken to defend U.S. forces in the region from Iranian-backed militant groups. It also includes our diplomatic effort to constrain Iran's nuclear program, one of our most important and urgent actions.
The White House, Fred, seems to have a lot on its plate right now. We talk about it every week. Much of it self-inflicted. How should they respond?
You know, if we go through with Biden's plan to rejoin the nuclear deal, Iran will get about $150 billion in sanctions relief. A lot of that's going to go to terrorism. That means more Americans are going to be threatened with being kidnapped and killed by Iranian agents. This isn't going to stop. And they're going to target people who are making a difference in helping the dissident movement in Iran, like Masih. You know, she got an award from a human rights group for putting together a website where women just take off their headscarves and say down to the dictator. That's why she's such a threat.
All right. Fred Fleitz, Amir Fakhravar, so nice having you both on. We appreciate your insight and the information. Amir, thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.